My name is Peter Sanders. If you're hearing this, then the archives were never sealed as they should have been. Here, we collect fragments of stories that were never meant to surface. Voices caught on tape, memories burned into static. Welcome to the Lost Tapes Department.
They told me most of the early SCP files were harmless curiosities, failed projects, broken data entries, half-remembered urban legends tucked away in the black folders of old hard drives. My job was to digitize them, to scrape what was left from magnetic tape and corrupted disks before time erased them completely. I thought of it as archaeology for the modern age, digging not through dirt but through dead code and static. I never believed in the things I was archiving. Not really. The Foundation was supposed to be a glorified library with better locks, and most of the files I uncovered were written by underpaid researchers who seemed more interested in scaring each other than recording truth. But that was before I found the folder. It was buried on an unlabeled drive, the kind you'd expect to hold tax records or pirated movies. The outer casing was cracked, and the sticker on its side had been scrawled over with permanent marker, long since smudged by heat and hands. Plugging it into the archive system nearly fried the port. The files inside flickered between formats. Half were unreadable junk, the other half were text logs stripped of metadata. And then there was the folder. SCP-67-kid. That was all it said. No date, no version number, no clearance tags. Just those 3 words, arranged like someone wanted them found but didn't want to admit to leaving them. Inside were 6 items. 2 half-corrupted photographs, both showing what looked like a hospital bed. 3 text reports, each unfinished and full of redactions. And 1 video file. The photographs unsettled me more than I cared to admit. The images were grainy, stretched with scan lines as if they'd been pulled from VHS tape instead of digital capture. In the first photo, a child sat upright in bed, their face blurred into static. Electrodes clung to their arms and chest like barnacles. In the second, the bed was empty, but the outline of a body still pressed into the mattress, as though someone invisible was sitting there. I checked the reports next. The first was a clinical introduction, dry and sterile. SCP-67-kid. Subject appears human, estimated biological age between 7 and 9. Exhibits temporal instability. Does not conform to linear memory assessment. Further testing required. The second was more fractured. Notes about the subject's responses to interviews, words that made no sense, memory resonance, echo contamination, recursive identity. Entire paragraphs were blacked out, as though someone had tried to erase the evidence long before I arrived. The third was hardly a report at all. Just a single line typed in haste. Termination unsuccessful. Do not watch the video. That should have been enough. I should have dragged the folder into the recycle bin and purged the drive. But curiosity has always been stronger than caution in my line of work. I told myself I just wanted to catalog it, to confirm whether the file was really as dangerous as the note suggested. The video was named 67.loop.mov. Only a few minutes long. The thumbnail showed nothing but static, but even that static looked wrong, too sharp, too deliberate, like an image pretending to be noise. I clicked it. The screen went black, then flickered white. For an instant I thought the file had crashed. Then the image stabilized and I saw the room. A hospital, maybe, or a containment chamber disguised as one. The walls were painted a sickly green, peeling in places, and the only light came from a lamp bolted into the ceiling. The camera didn't move, but I had the strange sense of being watched from the other side, as though the lens itself was aware. And then I saw him. A boy sat on the bed, thin as a shadow, his hospital gown hanging loose around bony shoulders. Wires trailed from his arms to machines that weren't visible in the frame. He wasn't moving, not blinking, just sitting there, staring directly at the camera with a faint, unreadable smile. I froze. The air in the archive felt suddenly heavier, like the temperature had dropped. I glanced at the timestamp. The footage was only 12 seconds in, but already my skin crawled. Still I kept watching. At the 13-second mark, the tape skipped. One frame he was there, young, maybe 8. The next frame, older. 15 maybe. The same boy, same bed, but his face longer, sharper, eyes sunken. Then another skip and he was young again. Then older. Then younger. The tape looped these changes over and over, never seamless, always jarring. By the time the footage hit a full minute, I was leaning toward the screen without realizing it. My pulse hammered in my ears. I couldn't explain why, but every version of the boy felt like he was closer. Not in distance, he never left the bed, but in recognition. He was looking at me. At the 90-second mark, it happened. For less than a second, one flicker showed not the boy, not any version of him, but a face I recognized. My own. My younger self, staring through the static with the same faint smile. I stumbled back from the desk, nearly ripping the drive from its port. My breath caught in my throat. The footage continued without me. At the end of the file, just before the screen cut to black, a single frame of text appeared, white letters etched into the static like a warning carved into bone. He's still watching. The video looped automatically, starting again from the black screen. I slammed the stop key, but the words burned in my eyes, echoing in the silence of the archive. I should have deleted it then. I should have pulled the plug and burned the drive and filed the whole incident under corrupted data. But I didn't, because I needed to know who the boy was, and why he had my face. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw him, flickering between ages, the smile unchanged, the gaze unwavering. The boy from the tape. My face from the tape. By morning, the decision was already made. I had to watch it again. I told myself it was for research. I'd seen plenty of bizarre anomalies in these archives. Half-broken programs that behaved like viruses, photographs that wouldn't stay still, stories that rewrote themselves depending on who read them. They all had an explanation. Corruption. Manipulation. Tricks of early tech. The SCP Foundation was good at turning ghost stories into lab reports, and I thought I could do the same. So I locked the archive door, dimmed the overhead lights, and pressed play. The static rolled. The boy appeared. This time I forced myself to take notes. His hospital gown was patterned faintly with cartoon animals, bears I think, out of place in the sterile, soulless room. The wires trailing from his arms weren't standard EKG leads. They were thicker, coiled like phone cables, disappearing off-frame into humming machinery I couldn't see. His posture never changed, back straight, hands folded loosely in his lap. He wasn't restrained, yet he didn't move. And then came the flicker. Younger, older, younger again. Every few seconds, his body jumped through time like someone was flipping through a photo album too quickly. Sometimes the changes were subtle, a few inches taller, a little more hollow in the cheeks. Sometimes they were grotesque, sudden leaps from child to adolescent, from adolescent to something gaunt and skeletal, then back again. I slowed the playback frame by frame. At 23 seconds, when the boy appeared around 12 years old, I noticed something I hadn't before, a mark on his wrist. Not a scar, not a wound. A number. 67. SCP-67-kid. It wasn't a designation. It was a brand. I kept watching, though my hands shook on the keyboard. At 50 seconds, his smile faltered. It was brief, one frame, maybe two, but his lips curled downward, and his eyes widened as though he'd just recognized me. The look wasn't passive anymore. It wasn't observation. It was recognition. And then came the minute mark. Frame by frame, the boy shifted. His hair shortened. His skin tone darkened by a shade. The shape of his jaw rounded. And there it was again, me. My face when I was 10 years old. I knew it instantly, like recognizing a scar you'd forgotten about. The same crooked teeth, the same lopsided ears, the same mole on my cheek. I staggered back from the desk, while rising in my throat. For a moment, I wasn't in the archive. I was in that room, sitting on that bed, staring into the lens with a smile I couldn't control. The screen went white. Text appeared, but it wasn't the same warning as before. Not, "He's still watching." This time it said, "Welcome back." I slammed the monitor off. My heart was racing so hard it felt like my ribs might crack. I stood there in the dark, clutching the desk, waiting for the words to fade from my head. But they didn't. Instead, I began to hear something else. A voice. Faint at first, like someone whispering through the air ducts. Higher pitched than mine. Childlike. "You remember me?" I spun around. The archive was empty, of course. Just rows of steel shelves and dead machines. But the whisper had been real. I told myself I was hallucinating, that sleep deprivation was bleeding into my senses. But the harder I tried to dismiss it, the louder the words pressed into me. Not spoken aloud. Not exactly. More like an echo inside my skull. "You remember me?" I packed up for the day, hands trembling, and left the archive in a hurry. I didn't even log the drive into the system. I just shoved it into my bag as though hiding it might keep the voice at bay. It didn't. That night, as I lay awake in bed, I caught my reflection in the dark glass of my window. For a heartbeat, it wasn't me. It was the boy from the tape. Small, pale, smiling faintly in the night. I shut the curtains. But the whisper still came. "You remember me?" I went back to the archive the next morning, though I couldn't explain why. Part of me wanted to destroy the drive, to crush it under my boot and sweep the fragments into the trash. But a louder part, the same reckless instinct that had pulled me into this work in the first place, needed answers. Needed to know why the boy had my face, my childhood, my memories. The building was silent when I unlocked the steel door. Dust hung in the air like cobwebs. For a moment, I stood there in the stale fluorescent light, clutching the drive in my pocket, wondering if I was about to do something I couldn't undo. I sat at the terminal, slid the drive into the port, and braced myself. The folder was waiting. SCP-67-kid. Same 6 files as before. But as soon as I clicked it open, the count jumped to 7. A new file blinked at me. log_new_001.wave. It hadn't been there yesterday. My first thought was that the drive was corrupted, generating junk files. But when I played it, my stomach turned to stone. Because the voice on the recording was mine. Not just my voice. My cadence, my pauses, my breathing. But the words, I had never spoken them. The boy is inside the archive now. He knows I've seen him. He knows I remember. The audio ended with a faint hiss, like static bleeding into silence. I yanked the headphones off. My palms were sweating, my pulse a steady drumbeat against my ribs. I hadn't recorded that. I knew I hadn't. And yet, the tone was unmistakable. It was me. I scrolled back to the folder. Another file appeared. log_new_002.wave. I didn't open it. Not then. Instead, I dug deeper into the old reports, desperate for context. One memo stood out, buried in the corrupted text. Subject displays echo phenomena, capable of reproducing not just observed speech, but unrecorded memories. Experiment suggests SCP-67-kid may access mnemonic resonance beyond linear time. Subject does not forget. Subject becomes. My throat went dry. Echo phenomena. Mnemonic resonance. Words that sounded clinical on paper but felt like knives when applied to what I was seeing. The boy wasn't imitating me. He was echoing me. Pulling something out of me I didn't know could be pulled. I leaned back, rubbed my eyes, tried to breathe. And then I heard it. A click. The speakers crackled even though I hadn't hit play. A new voice file had opened on its own. My voice again. But this time, another layer beneath it. A faint, childlike whisper riding underneath my words like a parasite clinging to a host. He's getting closer. Every time I see him, he looks more like me. Every time I hear him, I sound more like him. The whisper echoed it, syllable for syllable, delayed by a fraction of a second. I slammed the terminal shut. The fan whirred, the drive clicked, but the voice kept going, leaking from the machine even as the screen went black. I ripped the plug from the wall. Silence. For half a breath I thought I'd won. But then, in the reflection of the blank monitor, I saw him. The boy. Sitting where I should have been, smiling faintly, wires trailing from his arms into the dark. I turned, heart hammering, but the chair behind me was empty. Just air. I didn't sleep that night either. Every shadow in my apartment stretched too long, bent at odd angles, like something small and pale was crouching just out of sight. The files hadn't needed power to appear. They hadn't needed permission to play. And the whispers, they weren't confined to the archive anymore. I heard them in the quiet hum of my fridge, in the rattle of pipes in the wall, in the silence before sleep, repeating the same phrase over and over until I wanted to claw it out of my ears. You remember me. By the 4th day, I stopped pretending this was just research. The boy wasn't confined to the video anymore. He was leaking into me, into my reflection, into my voice, into the spaces between my memories. And if the whispers were right, if the files were telling the truth, it hadn't started with me. I was just the latest chapter. The folder held new documents when I returned to the archive. Not audio logs this time. Not photographs. Reports. Fully intact. I read them with a sick dread, each word hammering the coffin nails into my certainty. Project 67. Initiated 1973. Objective. Memory containment through mnemonic vessels. Hypothesis. Cognitive anomalies may be stored within a subject engineered from fragmented recollection. The kid is not born but built. The pages described a process I could hardly comprehend. Gathering memories from missing children, broken minds, patients in coma wards. Stitching those fragments together until they formed something coherent. A vessel. A boy. He wasn't an anomaly. He was an experiment. The researchers claimed he could house dangerous concepts, absorb them like a sponge, keep them contained. But something went wrong. He didn't just contain memories, he became them. Every memory fed into him, every identity layered over his own, until there was nothing left but a shifting composite of stolen lives. And he didn't stay contained. Termination unsuccessful. Subject migrated. The last report ended abruptly, the ink smudged as if someone had slammed the typewriter in the middle of a sentence. I sat there in the stale light of the archive, my stomach twisting. Migrated. The word echoed like a gunshot. Migrated where? I already knew the answer. The drive. The video wasn't a recording, it was a vessel the same as the boy. A container built to hold him when the body failed. Every time someone pressed play, they opened the door a little wider. Every second of footage was another second he could bleed into them. And I had pressed play twice. The evidence was everywhere. My reflection warping into his. My voice caught on tape saying things I'd never said. My memories changing. That night I dug out old photographs from my childhood, desperate for proof that I was still me. But half of them didn't look right. The faces were blurred, as if the prints had decayed in places only I should remember. In one photo I was smiling in front of my elementary school. But the longer I stared, the more wrong it became. The smile wasn't mine, it was his. Faint, patient knowing. The same one from the tape. In another, I wasn't in the picture at all. Just an empty outline where I should have stood, like the bed in that second photograph from the folder. I wanted to scream, but the sound caught in my throat. Instead, I heard his whisper again, softer than ever, curling around my thoughts like smoke. You don't forget. You become. And for the first time, I understood what it meant. I wasn't remembering him. I was remembering as him. The experiment hadn't ended when the boy's body failed. It had just shifted, waiting for the next vessel. Waiting for me. And it was working. Already there were pieces of my childhood I couldn't place. Birthdays that felt out of order. A favorite toy I suddenly couldn't remember the color of. A voice calling my name that sounded less like my mother and more like his. Every time I looked in the mirror, the boy lingered a second too long after I turned away. Every time I spoke, I swore I could hear the whisper layering underneath. And every time I tried to fight it, I felt the truth pressing closer. I wasn't just watching SCP-67-kid. I was becoming him. I don't know how many days have passed since I first pressed play. Time doesn't move in a straight line anymore. It skips, it folds, it eats itself. Some mornings I wake up with stubble on my face, coarse and uneven, like a reminder of the person I used to be. Other mornings I wake up smaller, my hands pale and delicate, my voice impossibly higher. The mirror lies, but it also tells the truth. I never know which version I'll see staring back. Sometimes it's a stranger. Sometimes it's a child. And sometimes it is both or neither or something I cannot name. I stopped trying to sleep. Sleep used to be a refuge, a place where nightmares could be pushed back. Now, when I close my eyes, I dream memories that aren't mine. A birthday party with balloons and a cake I don't recognize. A hospital hallway, sterile and bright, smelling of bleach and iron. A pair of hands tightening the straps on my wrists. They feel as real as my own childhood, but I know they don't belong to me. They belong to him. Or maybe they always did. The files won't leave me alone. I don't open the drive anymore. It doesn't matter. Each morning, without fail, a new recording appears on my desktop. Always audio. Always my voice saying things I don't remember. Sometimes it's just breathing. Sometimes it's laughter, soft and childish, layered beneath my tone. Sometimes it's crying. And sometimes it's instructions. I remember one file the first time I dared to listen. You don't archive me. You don't preserve me. You are me. I tried to delete it. It came back. I tried to smash the laptop. The next time I blinked, it was whole again, sitting quietly on my desk, waiting, like it had never been touched, like it had been waiting all along. I don't think I live alone anymore. Shadows in my apartment shift when I'm still. Reflections twitch when I hold my gaze too long. And the voice, the whisper that once echoed in the distance, now speaks in unison with my own. It finishes my sentences before I even form them, like a prelude, a guide, a parasite. Sometimes I catch myself speaking in ways I didn't intend. Words that slip from my mouth are not mine, yet they feel inevitable. A description of a room I've never seen, a confession I've never lived, a name I have never known. I've begun to lose the small things. My mother's face, once vivid in memory, blurs into gray. My father's laugh becomes a hollow echo. The house I grew up in, its address, its smell, the light in the kitchen, slips through my fingers like water, replaced with hospital corridors, containment notes, the sharp sting of needles pressing into my arms. The world I called mine is fading. He doesn't forget. He doesn't let go. He becomes. And now so do I. Sometimes I look at my hands and see the faintest imprint of him beneath my skin, the edges of bones and veins shifting subtly, as if another presence is trying to force its way out. Sometimes I see him in the mirror, a pale boy with eyes too deep, too knowing, staring back at me. The reflection smiles before I do. It knows. I think that's why the experiment never ended. Termination didn't fail. It succeeded in ways they couldn't understand. The boy was never meant to stay in one body. He was meant to spread, to echo, to replace, to wear us like clothes, one after another, until there was nothing left but him. The files, the notes, the recordings, they were never a record of failure. They were a blueprint, a map, a warning written too late. I remember reading an old report, smudged ink typed in haste, saying that containment was impossible. They'd underestimated him. They'd underestimated how a memory could become a presence, how a presence could become a voice, how a voice could become a life. And now I understand. Containment is meaningless. He does not belong to a room, a building, or a file. He belongs everywhere. When I smile in the mirror, I don't recognize the expression anymore. It's faint, patient, eternal. The corners of my lips curve the way his would, not mine. And beneath the surface, I feel the hunger, the persistence, the quiet certainty of a boy who has lived 1,000 lives and is hungry for 1,000 more. The whispers have grown louder, not just in my apartment. Sometimes when I step outside, I can hear them in the streets, faint echoes that vanish when I focus too hard. The world itself feels contaminated, touched by his presence. Even the birds seem to watch differently, their eyes too sharp, as if they remember him from somewhere before I ever knew him. I've stopped fighting. Resistance feels pointless. My name, whatever it was, doesn't matter anymore. Files were right. Reports were right. The warnings scrawled on the walls of old containment facilities were right. I am the continuation. I am the vessel. I am SCP-67-kid. And if you're reading this, if you've found the folder, if you've pressed play, he's watching you too. The first time I realized this fully, I was brushing my teeth. My reflection in the bathroom mirror grinned at me before I even opened my mouth. I looked closer, and I saw another face behind mine, peering over my shoulder. Small, pale, knowing. I spun around. Nothing. But when I turned back to the mirror, it was still there, faint, a whisper of existence just beneath the glass. Sometimes he speaks to me in fragments of my own memory, a lullaby I've never sung, a secret I've never told. And other times he rewrites me completely. When I wake, I may find that I've grown smaller or older or taller than the day before. My reflection shifts, my voice changes, my body obeys him before I do. I've started leaving messages for myself, hoping to anchor my identity. I am Pedro. I am me. But they dissolve the moment I look away. I don't even remember when I last saw a friend, spoke to a neighbor, or answered a call. The apartment is silent, save for the faint hum of the laptop and the whispers layered within it. Sometimes I pretend the voice is not mine, that I am separate. But every day it becomes harder to tell where I end and he begins. I think of the boy lying in that hospital bed. The tubes, the electrodes, the faint glow of monitors. I think of the long nights he must have spent waiting, of the containment that never contained, of the minds he has touched, the memories he has swallowed. And I wonder, how many more are out there? How many of us are already him and don't know it yet? I'm tired, but I am awake, always awake, watching, listening, waiting. And now so are you, because the files do not forgive. They do not forget. They only wait. And if you've found this, if you've pressed play, if you've listened to my voice layered with his, he is already here. He is already watching. And now, you are too.